Hey there everyone, great to be back with you for another Vibrant Music Teaching Chat. Today we're going to be chatting about buddy and partner lessons. So I teach a lot of my lessons in this format, in buddy or partner formats. And I also do group workshops in normal circumstances. So I'm going to be talking about how I've transitioned this to online lessons and how that's working for me and what kind of activities we do in our buddy lessons. Let's get started. So everyone, thank you so much for joining me. If you're joining me live right now, I would love to hear from you in the chat. Do say hi there and let me know whereabouts you are, and also let me know what you want to know about buddy lessons or partner lessons and that kind of stuff, and how you're going with the transition to this format online. Or maybe this is something that you're considering for next year and has nothing to do with online lessons for you. Let me know what you want to hear about today and what brought you here over in the chat. Great to see Sharon here already, and Cherry, and Elizabeth, Carrie, awesome, and CJ. So great to have you all here. As you join us, please say hi. I'd like to know who's joining us here. And yeah, we're going to be talking about buddy lessons today. So if you're not familiar with what that even means, I'm going to explain that, and I'm going to go through what exactly I've been doing in my buddy lessons. So our basic format for today is we're going to be talking about logistics, so the technical, how I set this up, how it actually works, projects that you can do in your buddy lessons, technique, and games in buddy lessons. So we'll go through each one of those. But before we get to that, a little bit of housekeeping. So we have our coupon code still running. If you need access to games and other resources for your online lessons for one-on-one or buddy lessons, then you can get it at vibrantmusicteaching.com using the coupon code online. That will give you access to a 1-week trial for just $1. $1 for 1 week. Get access to everything on the site and cancel if you want before the end of the week, and you will absolutely not be charged again. Otherwise, it will roll over to our regular great rate, which is $25 a month. An absolute bargain. If you're joining me for the first time here, welcome, and I hope you'll come back again. We have these sessions on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays every week at the moment, and they're always a lot of fun. Each one's a little bit different. I take theme suggestions from you guys, and I love to see people coming back again and again. So, for example, Carrie has been on loads of these. Sharon, I've seen you on a few of them as well, and I love to have regulars in the room and get to hang out with you guys. So do go back again and again. Oh, and Laurie's here. Great to see you here, Laurie. Claire, Jimmy, awesome to see you. Ashley, and I'm not sure the name. Oh, Carla from Brazil. Great to have you here. It's awesome to have people from all over the world on these sessions so we can come together as a community. So as I said, we're going to be talking about buddy lessons today. So the first thing I want to explain to you is just what buddy lessons are and the logistics of them. So this was the topic that I believe it was you, Carrie, who brought this up, who wanted to hear about how I'm doing buddy lessons in the online format and how that's working out for me. But some of you may not be familiar with buddy lessons at all. So let's just explain that. Buddy lessons are overlapping lessons. So this is where I have student A, let's call them Annie. So Annie comes along. I'm going to explain normal buddy lessons in person first, okay? So Annie comes along at 3 and she stays with me for half an hour. Me and Annie have a great time. We review our repertoire, we do all that fun stuff. Then Billy comes along. So Billy arrives at 3:30, and Billy and Annie are now in the studio, and they stay together from 3:30 until 4. And then at 4, Annie goes away, and Billy stays for his solo time. Okay, so you've got solo time, buddy time, solo time, overlapping in the middle. This is how I teach most of my students. You can vary that length. I used to do 40 and 20. I now do 30 and 30. Meaning I used to have only 20 minutes of overlap between my students, and now I've upped that to 30 so that it's 50-50, and that works even better. I love having that extra bit of time where they're both in the studio together. So that's how basic buddy lessons work. Now the logistics in online lessons are obviously a little bit different, and yeah, still not complicated at all. No more complicated. All that I do is I have a Zoom link set up, and I actually these days, since they made the switch with the password protection, the privacy and stuff, I actually have the same link for all of my students and then the same link for all of another teacher's students at my studio. So one link, one student shows up, Annie shows up at 3 p.m. on that link and she knows her time. She gets put in the waiting room straight away and I let her in when it's 3. Then Annie comes in, we hang out together. At some point in there, Billy shows up, and I let Billy in from the waiting room on Zoom into the live room at 3:30. And then me and Billy and Annie hang out together for half an hour. And then at 4, I put Annie into the waiting room again. I do that so that Annie, especially if Annie is young, let's say she's 6, she needs her mum to come and exit the window or she's not sure how to do that. I just put them back in the waiting room and then I don't have to worry about that, and their parent can come along and close out the window whenever they're ready to do so. There's no rush. Right? So that's basically how it works. It's very simple. And it's probably the teaching that you're wondering about more than that, but I wanted to get the logistics out of the way too. Great stuff, Sharon. Hoping to do some group summer workshops, but I'm considering smaller groups, 2 to 4, which is more like buddy lessons. That's great. Hey Helen, great to see you here again. Cherry, do you find that the buddy lessons work better for both student and you for time and performance? That's a big question. Yes is the answer. I'm not sure what you mean by time and performance, but yes. There's a reason I have almost all my students in this format, and it's because I believe it is better for the type of studio that I run, which is one where I'm trying to create generalist students who are great at playing with other students, who need individual attention to succeed. I still believe that, or not to succeed, sorry, I'm not trying to say that group lessons aren't a valid format. What I mean is they appreciate the one-on-one attention of a teacher being there. However, they also benefit from having another student and working with them. It's not the most profit maximizing format to teach in, but you will make a little bit more than you would make one-on-one if you structure it correctly. If you go to colourfulkeys.ie/buddy, I have some more general information about this, or just search for buddy piano lessons. I'll probably pop up there right at the top of Google. Yeah, I have some more general information there about switching to buddy lessons and how to set it up and how to make these decisions, because there's a lot to that. But I mean, a few follow-ups here too. Laurie, what if Billy is late? Well, then me and Annie just hang out. What's the problem? I am someone who plans a lot, but that doesn't mean I'm not flexible. So if Billy is late or doesn't show up at all, that doesn't ever, I don't think it, maybe it's happened once or twice in person. It's happened a few times online, actually, because people are out of their routine and they just totally forget. They go on a bike ride and they just forget about it. Like their parent decides, we're going to mitch off homeschool today. They go out for a bike ride and then they just blank. Or whatever other reason, they just forget about it. So if that happens, then I just do what I would have done with both of them pretty much, but with one. It'll still work. It won't be quite as fun. But it'll still work just the same. Carrie. Okay, so the start of one pair of buddy lessons is at 3 and ends at 4:30. So you schedule 2 students every 90 minutes. That is exactly right. Every pair of students fits into a 90-minute block. Exactly right, Carrie. Okay. Helen, do I find that the buddy format is easier to execute online or more involved? No, it's not easier or harder, but it is different. So let me explain to you what we've been doing in our buddy lesson time. The first thing we've been doing is projects. Now, we always do this in buddy time, but I've been doing this a little bit more. Which means that it's actually less different between my different buddy times during the week, meaning there's less individualized plans. That's because the logistics of online lessons just make more sense. Generally, it makes more sense for my time, and also because I have to invest more time in setting up a project to make it work online, it makes sense to me to have that work for all my students. Whereas before they might have been doing more various things, and that's because I've built up a whole toolkit of stuff that I can draw upon more easily without a ton of planning. So I've been using a lot of projects. We did our composing project, which I detailed in another Vibrant Music Teacher chat here. So that project, they passed along a composition. I don't want to bore people who watched that previous chat, so you can go back and check out the full details on that. But basically, each student composed a different part of a piece, a different stage of a composition, and together they completed a bunch of pieces, right, as a team. You can go back, like I say, and check out that chat, but that was one example. The one that we're doing at the moment is working on chords and sort of Tim Topham-esque thing with a 4-chord pattern. So I'm doing that with all levels of students. So for my beginners, I'm just doing, that's at a funny angle, isn't it? Today, there we go. Haven't taught any students yet today, so I haven't fixed it. Right, so the beginners are just doing that. They're just doing the thirds from the chord. And we're sticking in C major for a little while longer. And for the students who are further along are doing full chords, obviously. And then the students who are further along again are immediately moving into inversions as necessary. So that is something I can maybe go into in a separate chat if people are interested in the process I'm following there. As I said, it is loosely based on Tim Topham's 4-chord composing, so if you're familiar with that, or if you're not, you can look that up if you're curious about sort of what I'm doing there, although my approach is a little bit different. So that's the project we're doing at the moment in our buddy lesson time, and before that we were doing composing. And that chord project, chord study, whatever, will basically take us up to the end of the year. So at the moment we're doing mostly just me writing on the whiteboard, coming up with these patterns and experimenting with them a lot together and learning and moving through keys and trying different rhythms. And then at some stage, depending on each buddy pair's progress, we'll be taking one of those progressions or several, putting them into GarageBand and adding the smart instruments to them, so I can bring my iPad up on screen. I'll be walking them through that and they'll be making all the decisions, but I'll be putting it in order to create a looping backing track that they can use for scales. So that is a large portion of my online buddy lesson time. Now, that's not true all year long in person, but it is actually pretty true at this time of the year in person. So our composing project we always do during buddy time, and that would have been at this time of year anyway. So it's not that unusual for the kids, and it does make the planning that little bit more sensible when I'm transferring all this stuff to online lessons and making that work. Ashley, I will not address that because I will not do duets. So she said, you'll probably address this, but I'm curious about audio lag for duets. You can't play duets without some fancy technology, Ashley. This comes up every chat. I wonder, yep, it's probably a game we could play. Anyway, we'll leave that thought aside. But for duets, there is no way to do it without something like internet MIDI, and you will need your student to enable that as well as you. There are tutorials out there on that, but I won't get into them here. I do have videos about ideas for replacing your duet work, but I'm not getting into duets myself in real time because it would mean my student investing in internet MIDI on their end and having a keyboard, and that's only going to work if you have a very dedicated student. It's not going to work for, having all 35 of my students switch to using internet MIDI because they won't necessarily have an electric keyboard or a digital piano, and they would each need to individually buy that software. Okay, Claire, I can go into more on the chord project maybe in another chat. I do think we should maybe focus on the buddy lesson time overall in this session, but if others want to hear more about that, and I can do almost a sample video where I talk you through exactly what it looks like in a lesson in a separate video if that's of interest to lots of people. Helen, yes. So, good question. Is each pair of buddies at about the same level? Yes, they generally are. More important to me, though, is that they're the same age or a similar age. So actually quite a lot of them are not really, really wide levels, but they could be. However, I would have several that are, say, one is part of the way through book 1 of their method book, and the other is into book 3. So that's pretty far apart, but they're the same age, okay? So that's my priority because I want them to actually vibe off each other and have a good relationship together. So age is my top priority when I'm scheduling buddy lessons and putting people together. And after that, I will try to get the levels fairly similar. So I can work within that, and I'm very good at balancing the different levels. And keep in mind that all our repertoire and our scales, if necessary, and all of that stuff happens during solo time. So we still have that solo time to do stuff like that. So that works out very well for us. A question from Helen there. One thing I admire about your planning process is your ability to take one activity and apply it to all your students. Something I'd like to do more in the future. Yeah, Helen, that comes with time for sure. And it's not something I do with everything. So you definitely need to have actually differentiated things. However, with projects like this and in general with buddy time, there will be more overlap because I am already making it work for multiple levels of students within a buddy pairing. And so they will generally be activities that I can level on the fly. Carrie, that's funny. A couple of students begged me to play a duet with them online. I told them it would sound funny over the computer. They wanted to anyway, so we did, and it was awful. We had a good laugh. Yeah, it just won't work. But you can do lots of call and response. You can do other things, and you can do Laurie's idea, brain sync Laurie. I did it yesterday. Where one student starts playing, if they're playing the same piece, this is. Laurie did this with teacher and student, so you can do it that way as well, but I did it with 2 buddies yesterday, Laurie. So you have one student start the piece and they can stop at any random spot and the other student needs to pick it up from there. If I do it next time, I think I'm going to have them do like a salute when they're passing it over, just in case there is a sound delay or an issue with the sound coming through, as sometimes happens on the buddy student's end, just so it can be a bit more instantaneous and they know that they're finished. But yeah, that was a really fun way to get them sort of playing together. Okay, super. No more questions for now. No, one more. Cherry, I have an adult beginner that has been taking since February and I think I'm about to gain another adult in the next couple of weeks. Will buddy lessons work with them? You can. I haven't put my adult students in buddy lessons. I have them in solo lessons because they're also shockingly embarrassed to play together. I would like to push them more into ensemble playing, but I've been hesitant to do that so far. Laurie, you're cute. Of course! We're all here to share ideas and to, collaborate together, right? I love the idea. It's really fun. Okay, so that's projects. That takes up a large portion of our time. The other 2 things we work on are technique and games. So in terms of technique, as I said, my students wouldn't necessarily be exactly the same level. in buddy pairings, but a lot of them would be very close, and I can keep them at roughly the same level for scales and technical exercises. And so online, in person, that means we're playing backing tracks and they're playing scales together as drills. So using something like iReal Pro or Music Lock as our scale backing track. And both buddies sitting side by side at the keyboard will be playing their scales together. And you know, if one of them misses some of them, that's fine, and they catch it and pick it up from the other one and stuff like that. Online, what we've been doing is various forms of scale offs. So if they know the full circle of fifths, for example, I will have both of them draw a circle of fifths to practice learning that pattern. And then they get to decide what the other person plays on each round. So Annie says Billy has to play C major. Billy plays C major. They both cross that off. And then Billy decides that Annie has to play G flat major because he's a bit smarter and he knows that that means he doesn't have to play G flat major. You get the idea, right? G flat is actually lovely to play, but you get what I'm saying. So that's one form of scale off. Another is again around the circle of fifths, or as far as they've gotten with that. One student plays C, the next student has to pick up with G, the next student picks up with D, and we're just cycling back and forth through that. Now the key to making this work is that the other student, the silent student, should not be waiting. They should be ghosting or silently playing on the surface of the keys. So while Annie is playing C major, Billy should be trying to stay in time with them. And the challenge I have for them is if Annie goes back and forth over a note, you need to try and do the same thing so that you're actually following exactly where she is in the scale. And then they pick up with the next one and they swap back and forth, okay? Another technique thing that we work on is actual technique. So that's technical exercises, and you could do the same thing with chords or whatever you're working on, arpeggios, anything. The other thing we're doing in terms of technique is having each student check each other's technique. And we do this again in the studio. I would normally have Steve with me and I would ask them, Steve is my little lobster. Should have explained that. I would normally have Steve with me. It's just that it looks like I'm holding a little man called Steve, if you don't know who Steve is. Steve the Stickler is my little lobster teddy. And he corrects technique in our studio. So I'd have one of them hold Steve, the other one is sitting at the piano and playing some technical exercise or preparing their piano posture, something like that. And Steve needs to go around and check, right, all the different aspects that we've been working on, round hands, strong fingertips, everything like that. So they learn a lot from commenting on each other's technique that way. Now, in online lessons, obviously that's not necessarily possible. However, if their camera is decently positioned, so I have a few even at this stage that the angle is not good, and it's just because the area I live in, a lot of the houses are very, 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 very small. Okay, including mine, it's not very big, but if you have an original house that's not extended, it's even smaller. So pianos are often crammed into a corner. There is nowhere to put the camera that is far back enough for us to be able to see clearly. Do you know what I mean? To see a side-on view. So if that happens, then we can't do this. But if there is a good view, I still have them be each other's teachers. So one of them plays a technique exercise. The other one has to say, oh, did they do this, 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 and this? Whatever is appropriate for their level. Does that make sense? Hit the like button if you're following along with me here. But that is another great way for them to be the teacher, to work on each other's technique, and to get used to commenting on each other's playing as well, because that's something I want them to do in their buddy time. To be comfortable with that idea, to not feel like it's criticizing in a negative way, it's just helping each other out, helping each other figure out what they need to improve upon or how they can get better and how we can all progress together. So that's technique. And then the last area, you probably guessed it, even if I hadn't put it up earlier, you would have guessed it, and that's games. And I have a whole other Vibrant Music teacher chat. It was last Monday. It's been our most popular one so far, I think, which is great. I love that that was our most popular one so far because it means that lots of teachers are interested in playing games online. Isn't that awesome? So that was last Monday, not the one just gone, the week before. And in that chat, I detailed exactly 3 different ways that you can play games in online lessons, and you can go back and watch that. We also have videos about this. We have tons of stuff on the channel, right? So if you just do a search for it, you will absolutely come across that. And you can play lots of theory games in your online lessons, and I've been doing those mostly. I've been using those in my practice with pals sessions and a little bit in my buddy lesson time as well. But the practice with pals is another thing that I went into in a separate chat, which is where I'm my replacement for group workshops. So it's where I'm bringing together any student who wants to come along, and then we practice together and we play games together, and it's worked out really, really well. Okay, any more questions? Hit me up in the chat, let me know. Claire, they're ghost playing by listening. So she said, are the students able to ghost play when the screen they would need to look at is to their side rather than in front of them? Yeah, they don't need to be looking. The whole point is that they're listening and recalling the scale and testing their visual memory of the scale without having the oral component be directly connected. Does that make sense? So if you are able to tap out a scale on the surface of the keys, you probably know it very well. Whereas if you have to play it every time to know what sharps are in it, you don't know it that well. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's the benefit of the ghost playing. Sherry, I've started asking my child student what she thinks of XYZ during her playing, and I think it is really helping her critical thinking and problem solving during lessons. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Giving students something to listen for in their own playing before they start is really, really beneficial. I so agree. Oh, good, Claire. Glad that made sense there. Okay, so that's my buddy lesson time. That's basically how it works. I haven't had to change an enormous amount online. It definitely looks a bit different. Some of the other things I've been doing as simple getting started or filling in, and in the beginning particularly, we did a lot of musical conversation. So one person plays a question, meaning do not land on the tonic at the end, no matter what scale or pentascale you're using. And then the other person answers with an answer which does land on the tonic, and then they ask a next question, and then vice versa, right? So that way they're building up their sense of phrasing, a little bit of on-the-spot composing, and it's a really great way for them to get warmed up. So if you're just getting going with buddy lessons online, I would start with that as a good warm-up activity. Or you can do echoes as well, where they're playing exactly what their buddy played. And yeah, but mostly it's been about bigger projects for a lot of the time, some games, and some still lots of technical work that we would normally cover during buddy time. And it's worked out really well. And a lot of students' parents have come back to me to say, oh, it was great that she was still able to see her buddy during the time, and that it really felt more like a normal piano lesson that we kept that. So I was glad I was able to carry it over. Initially, I wasn't sure that I would when we first went on lockdown, when I had exactly a day to think about what I was going to do with buddy time. I decided to go for it, and I'm really, really glad that I did, because it's been so beneficial for the students to continue that on. And we've had a lot of fun, and it's been a great opportunity for creativity, and it definitely brings some freshness to the middle of a longer lesson. If they were just going to be in solo lessons instead, and I divided that time up, I think some of my younger students might have lagged a bit, sitting on the bench that whole time. So it's been great to get them up and get them creative and do some different activities. So one more thing we do during my buddy lesson time, which I forgot to mention, which is a surprise starter. So if you're a VMT member, you can hop on over to the video library. They're in the video library because they have videos. So some people have been hunting in the printable library, but there's no printable, right? So they're in the video library. Surprise starters, those have been great to warm up for each one of our buddy lesson times. It's been really wonderful, and students have loved that. It's been something to look forward to, and we have a little guess as to what the intro video is going to be. No one ever gets it because I'm so wacky with what I choose for them. This week it is honey trickling on top of a croissant. I mean, who is going to get that? No one. But it's fun. And all of those work on patterns, so they work for all of my different levels of students. I just can adapt the samples I'm playing if necessary and adapt it that way, but every student gets to get involved with those, and they've been really wonderful. So if you're not a member, you can sign up with that coupon that I mentioned for a 1-week trial. That is vibrantmusicteaching.com is the site, and the coupon code is online. And if you input that, you will get a 1-week trial for $1, and after that it is $25 a month. Yes, Helen, broccoli was one of my favorites. Because I got to say, oh, it's one of my favorite foods, and they're like, chocolate cake? I'm like, nope, broccoli. I'm a strange person. Some of them said, I love broccoli too. Yes, glad you're enjoying those, Helen. They're super duper fun. Laurie, can we do a chat on circle of fifths? What I learned circle of fifths, I learned to do the flats going to the left counterclockwise, yeah. The circle of fifths would come into the chord thing we were talking about, although maybe it's a separate topic. Feel free to follow up on what you'd like to learn about that, Laurie, and we'll see if we can put together a chat for that next week. On Friday, however, we're going to be looking at what to send out to students before you finish up for the summer, if that's where you're at, or to get them ready for a new year, or just to wrap up this year with a neat little bow of loveliness. So there's a few different things that I'm sending out to my students next week. I say sending out, walking out. I'll probably walk all of them to my students' houses because it's good to get out in the sunshine. So that's what I'll be doing. But yeah, I'm going to be detailing all of that on Friday. I think it's going to be a really fun session. I've got some surprise things. Oh, here's a hint, right? These. If any of you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen one of those and post about those this morning. I'm going to be explaining those in the chat on Friday. And I'm looking forward to that, as well as what goes in my studio newsletter and what else I'm sending out to students at this time and how I'm organising the enrolment form online and all that goodness. So I hope you can join me back here again then. It was great to see so many of you here as always, and yeah, it's been awesome to hang out. So I'll see you back here on Friday afternoon, my time. Friday morning for those of you in the US, and if you are subscribed to emails, you'll get a link. Make sure to subscribe here on YouTube too so you get the notification, and I will see you there to chat about enrollment forms, newsletters and all that crack. Bye for now.